Call of Hunger, Chapter 29, Spirit of Blood. The forgotten temple was bathed in a dim, blood-red glow, the walls etched with ancient glyphs that seemed to pulse with life. The energy within the temple was palpable, thick in the air, almost alive with the weight of centuries. Tyseus stood before the swirling vortex of blood-red energy, his breath heavy as his hand hovered over the glyphs that lined the stone walls. The temple was a dark, foreboding place, filled with the remnants of old power, as though time itself had coiled around the space and refused to let go. His eyes flashed with a deep understanding, the kind that came from long journeys and even longer battles. As he extended his hand toward the glyphs, they shifted and pulsed under his touch, reacting to his presence. "These glyphs knot the confines of the poem," Tyseus muttered, his voice low and reflective. His words echoed through the cavernous temple, bouncing off the stone walls like forgotten prayers. He pressed a hand to his chest, feeling the rapid thrum of his heart, the blood coursing through his veins like an inferno. The energy of the temple seemed to feed into him, infusing his very essence with something primal, something ancient. "My blood whirls with the infernal chi," he continued, his breath ragged as the vortex of energy before him swirled faster, coalescing into shifting forms that danced before his eyes. Worlds coalescing and emanating from me. The temple seemed to respond to his words. The swirling energy intensified, spiraling outward from Tyseus, as if his very presence was reshaping reality. The blood-red light twisted into forms, worlds spiraling out like distant galaxies. Then, from the void, shadowy creatures emerged, beings that defied the laws of nature, their forms sharp and angular, like birds with triangular bodies, their wings barely more than sharp-edged fragments of shadow. These were the Boids, ancient entities seated long ago in the endless void. The Boids formed a spiral, guiding him forward. Tyseus felt the weight of ancient power filling the air around him, thick with the energy of builders long forgotten. The temple's aura shifted, growing heavier with each step he took. "A new era for the builders to set," Tyseus said softly, his voice filled with reverence for the ancient forces at work. He knelt by the edge of a river that ran through the temple, a dark, sluggish current that reflected the blood-red light around it. On the surface of the water, a clot of blood swirled lazily, a physical manifestation of the tension that filled the temple. Tyseus stared at it, his gaze intense, feeling the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. "The clot is optional," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "It could leave today." His head lowered, caught between the pull of holding on and the need to let go. The blood on the surface of the river pulsed, mirroring the conflict within him. He could feel the energy radiating from it, the tension between release and restraint, as though the entire universe was poised on the edge of a single choice. "To expand, one must let go," Tyseus said, his voice trembling slightly. He stared into the swirling waters, uncertainty creeping into his heart. The Boids continued to hum around him, their presence adding to the thick tension in the air. Tyseus' mind raced with questions, doubts, and fears, his hands clenched, his body taut with indecision. "Will I let eternity fade into obscurity?" he asked himself, his voice raw with emotion. His eyes scanned the river, the swirling clot of blood, a metaphor for all that he had carried with him, the battles, the losses, the victories that had come at too high a cost. The Boids hummed louder, the tension thickening like smoke in the air. Tyseus' thoughts spiraled as he considered his next move. "It may need tenacity to work," Tyseus murmured, his eyes lifted towards the sky, a silent plea forming on his lips. The memories of his past battles, the struggles he had faced, flickered through his mind like a broken reel of film. They played out before him, fragments of old wars, long nights of bloodshed, and the weight of loss that he had carried for far too long. "Or just let go of the fears that plague the drought," he said, his voice more certain now, as if the very act of speaking the words gave him strength. The air around him thickened, and a gust of wind rushed through the temple, making the air flicker and dance like flames. The energy within the temple shifted once more, growing wilder, more chaotic. The sound of rustling leaves filled the space, like trees gasping for breath in the heart of a storm. "The sorrow," Tyseus said, his voice rising above the din of the wind. "The war of smoke causes the bear to choke." A blade materialized in his hand, glowing with fiery energy. The heat from it radiated outward, mingling with the wild, untamed energy of the temple. He paused, feeling something unsettling rise within him, a strange foreign energy that made his heart race with uncertainty. A weird feeling, Taisea muttered, his gaze shifting towards the shadows. Around him, snakes began to appear, slithering silently across the ground. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, and Taisea could feel their presence, their watchful gaze adding to the weight of the moment. As he looked deeper into the scene, an intricate dream catcher materialized in the air above him. The object was strange, otherworldly, a fishing lure woven with the care of an ancient craft. It spun slowly in the air, casting a pale light that illuminated the path ahead. "The snakes," Taisea whispered, his gaze locked on the dream catcher as it spun. The air vibrated, and the ground beneath him shifted, the dream catcher illuminating a vast winding path that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. "The warrior rises along the serpentine siphon of transference," Taisea said in awe. His gaze followed the path, winding and twisting like the coils of a serpent, stretching beyond the horizon into the unknown. With renewed determination, Taisea gripped his blade tighter. The journey of 1,000 steps begins with a single circle. He took a step forward, his eyes filled with understanding. "I understand why I am here, to paint shadows." A voice, deep and ancient, echoed through the temple, cutting through the wild energy like a blade through air. "Do you really?" the voice asked, its tone dripping with malice. The air grew colder, the shadows stretching longer as a presence materialized in the dark corners of the temple. A shadowy maw reached out from the void, gripping Taisea's spirit tightly, as if trying to pull him into the darkness. "The claw has you," the voice growled. "There is much work to do." Taisea took a deep breath, steadying himself against the weight of the presence. "Gulo, patron of hunger," he said, recognizing the voice, the power that now stood before him. "The loop recoils," Taisea muttered, his voice filled with realization. As the words left his lips, the world around him twisted violently, the temple walls bending and warping as if reality itself had grown unstable. From the shadows a creature materialized, its forms shifting like a nightmare brought to life. It had the head of an eagle, sharp and cruel, with the long hook-like snout that gleamed in the dim light. From its back grew an aspen tree, its roots twisting downward, forming a dark fortress at its base. Encircling the fortress was the shadow of a dragon, its coiled form menacing and ancient. "I see now," Taisea whispered, his breath catching in his throat, as the creature disappeared into the shadows once more. "The victory of conclusion gains the spoils," Taisea thought, his heart racing as the air grew tenser. The glyphs on the walls pulsed faster, becoming erratic, like a heart beating out of sync with the rhythm of the universe. "These demons we face are the first of many," Taisea reflected, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. He lifted his blade, etching a prayer into the air, with each movement the blade glowing brighter with every stroke. Through each etch, a prayer to the Creator, he murmured. A voice, soft and distant, whispered back to him, "The original builder." Taisea's eyes widened, the one who first put the pen to paper. The temple hummed with ancient energy, Gulo's presence thickening in the air. "Are you willing to allow the supernatural in?" Gulo asked, his voice both a challenge and a promise. Taisea raised his head, standing firm, his blade glowing with fiery power. "If it be the Creator's will, I will face anything." The temple exploded with light, a bright, fiery glow that filled every corner with the energy of the ancient builders. Gulo's voice echoed through the temple, a final command before fading into the ether. "Good choice. The time is now. The next chapter holds the Jinn." Taisea nodded in understanding. He was ready for the challenges ahead. The light dimmed, but a new power had begun to awaken within him. "Those under the blood of the moon, stick to my side, and your hunger will be fulfilled for all of eternity," Taisea declared, his voice strong and certain. As the words left his lips, the temple scene shifted. Hooded figures materialized around him, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods. They chanted in a low rhythmic hum, their voices rising like a storm as blood rained down from the sky. The figures stretched their hands towards Taisea in reverence, their movements synchronized with the pulse of the universe. "The time of the Leviathan has begun," Taisea said, his gaze steady as the blood-red energy swirled around him. The shadows thickened, the fire in the temple roaring to life as Taisea's eyes glowed with fierce determination. The spirit of hunger stokes the flames, he said, gripping his blade tighter, feeling the surge of power building within him. I am here to bring victory to the game, Taisea declared, swinging his blade through the air. Each strike left a glowing trace of energy, the motion precise and controlled, as if the very act of wielding the blade was an art form. Each strike in the process is a slash towards becoming the Dream Titan, Titan said, his face fierce and focused, his every movement deliberate. Merging with myth, he whispered, feeling the power of the ancient builders coursing through him. The ground beneath him shifted, the temple transforming into something surreal, a bridge stretching into an unknown realm. The bridge into the third mind, Taisea said with clarity, stepping forward into the unknown. The temple continued to shift, reality itself bending and twisting as Taisea moved through it with purpose. The energy from the glyphs pulsed once more, surrounding him in a warm, comforting glow. A process that I step with, Taisea murmured, his voice calm and steady as he felt the rhythm of the universe aligning with his own. Here I meet dream's sweet kiss, he whispered, the words hanging in the air like a promise. The scene shifted once more, the temple dissolving into a vibrant forest teeming with life. Glowing mushrooms and strange plants pulsed with a soft, ethereal light, their energy humming in sync with Taisea's own. A fungal model, Taisea said, his voice filled with awe. In my DNA. He breathed in deeply, feeling his body augment with newfound power, the energy of the forest flowing into him like a river of life. Augmented bliss, he whispered, the words carrying a weight he had not felt before. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the air, soft but clear, like a distant memory brought back to life. Oma Manchu, the voice said, its tone gentle yet commanding. A new fire ignited within Taisea's spirit, his eyes glowing brighter with the surge of power. Rebirth, Taisea whispered, his voice filled with a quiet intensity. Fire one will not miss. As the words left his lips, a loud click echoed through the forest, signaling a transformation. The light around him flickered, the world growing silent as Taisea stood at the threshold of something new, something powerful. The journey had only just begun.